In early January 2026, the world was suddenly drawn towards South America. News alerts began appearing across international media platforms. Reports spoke of explosions in Caracas, Venezuela's capital. Social media filled with unverified videos, distant sounds of sirens, and confused eyewitness accounts. At first, it was unclear what was happening. Some believed it was a military exercise, others feared an internal uprising. But as the hours passed, a much more serious picture began to emerge. Governments around the world started monitoring the situation closely. News channels interrupted regular programming. Then came the statement that changed everything. According to US officials, a direct operation had taken place involving Venezuela's leadership. Soon after, international media reported that Venezuela's president had been removed from the country and taken into US custody. This was not a rumor, it was an official claim, and it immediately raised alarm across the globe. Such an action is extremely rare in modern international politics. The idea that a sitting head of state could be removed through a foreign operation challenges long-standing assumptions about sovereignty and global order. Within minutes, experts began asking difficult questions. Was this a military strike? Was it a law enforcement action? Or was it something entirely new, a signal that global rules were changing? Inside Venezuela, the atmosphere was tense and uncertain. Many citizens woke up to conflicting information. Some areas were quiet, others were filled with anxiety and confusion. People questioned who was in charge, whether institutions would hold, and what the coming days would bring. For a country already facing economic hardship and political division, the situation felt especially fragile. Allies and rivals of the United States studied the situation carefully. Legal experts debated international law. Analysts warned about precedent. Financial markets reacted cautiously, especially because Venezuela holds some of the world's largest oil reserves. It became clear that this was not just a regional issue. Whatever had happened in Venezuela would have consequences far beyond its borders. This documentary does not aim to sensationalize events. Instead, it aims to explain them clearly and calmly. We will look at what happened in Venezuela, why the United States took this step, how the operation unfolded, and what this moment could mean for the future of international relations. Because in a world where power, law, and politics collide, understanding the full picture matters more than ever. What happened in Venezuela? On the night of January 3rd, Venezuela entered one of the most tense moments in its modern history. Shortly after midnight, residents in and around Caracas reported loud explosions near strategic locations. Sirens could be heard, and movement in several districts was restricted. Venezuelan authorities announced emergency security measures, urging citizens to remain indoors. Communication disruptions added to the confusion, as reliable information became difficult to verify in real time. Within hours, international media began reporting that the United States had carried out a coordinated military operation. According to US statements, the operation involved both air and ground components and was designed to be short and controlled. Officials emphasized that the goal was not widespread destruction, but the targeting of specific command and security structures. The most shocking development came later that day. The United States announced that Venezuela's president, Nicolás Maduro, along with his wife, had been taken into US custody and removed from the country. Such an event is extremely rare in modern international politics. The capture or removal of a sitting head of state through a foreign military operation is almost unprecedented in the contemporary era. Inside Venezuela, reactions varied widely. Some citizens expressed fear and uncertainty, while others reacted with anger or disbelief. Government institutions faced immediate pressure as questions arose about leadership, authority, and control. Internationally, governments and analysts struggled to assess how the situation had escalated so quickly. What was clear, however, was that Venezuela's political reality had changed overnight, and the consequences would extend far beyond its borders. Why did the United States take this step? To understand why the United States acted, it is necessary to look at years of tension between Washington and Caracas. For a long time, U.S. officials accused Venezuela's government of corruption, authoritarian practices, and the suppression of political opposition. Elections in Venezuela were repeatedly challenged by Western governments, while opposition leaders reported arrests and restrictions. Another central issue was organized crime. U.S. authorities claimed that high-ranking Venezuelan officials were connected to international drug trafficking networks. These allegations led the U.S. to describe Venezuela as a so-called narco state. In response, the United States imposed heavy economic sanctions. These measures limited Venezuela's access to international banking systems, oil markets, and foreign investment. Over time, the economic impact became severe. Inflation rose dramatically, shortages of basic goods became widespread, and millions of Venezuelans left the country. Despite this pressure, President Maduro remained in power. He retained the loyalty of key military units and received political backing from countries that opposed U.S. influence. From the U.S. perspective, sanctions and diplomatic pressure had failed to produce change. How the operation was carried out. Available information suggests that the operation was carefully planned and executed with speed in mind. It began during early morning hours when civilian activity was minimal. Air assets were reportedly used to limit surveillance and defensive capabilities, reducing the risk of prolonged fighting. Ground units then moved towards secured locations linked to Venezuela's leadership structure. The stated objective was control and extraction, rather than occupation or destruction. According to U.S. officials, the operation was designed to be short, precise, and limited in scope. The active phase lasted only a few hours. By daylight, military movement had largely ceased. No extended urban combat was reported, but the psychological impact on the population was significant. For Venezuelans, the sudden absence of their president raised urgent questions. Who would govern? Would institutions remain stable? Would foreign forces stay or leave? Legal, global, and future implications. Almost immediately, the operation sparked intense legal and political debate. International law generally restricts the use of force between sovereign states. Military action is typically justified only in self-defense or with broad international authorization. Supporters of the U.S. action argued that this was not a war, but an international law enforcement operation against an individual accused of serious crimes. Critics strongly disagreed, stating that removing a sitting president through force violated national sovereignty. A major concern was precedent. If powerful countries can unilaterally decide that another nation's leader is illegitimate and remove them by force, global stability could be undermined. The United States has stated it does not seek long-term involvement, but rebuilding trust and order will be difficult. Beyond Venezuela, this event may influence how nations respond to leadership crises in the future. As the situation in Venezuela continues to unfold, one thing is already clear. This moment will not be forgotten easily. What happened was not just a sudden military action or a political headline. It was a turning point, one that forced the world to confront uncomfortable questions about power, authority, and the rules that govern international behavior. For Venezuela, the road ahead remains uncertain. Years of economic hardship and political division have already tested the country's resilience. The sudden removal of its president has added a new layer of instability. Institutions now face immense pressure. Citizens face difficult choices, and the direction the country takes next will shape the lives of millions. For the United States, this operation will be debated for years. Supporters may argue that decisive action was necessary. Critics may warn that a dangerous precedent has been set. Thank you for watching. Stay informed.